We talked about the air handler previously in the video about hot water boilers. This is one that is attached to a hot water boiler where we have a hot water supply and a hot water return that pushes through a coil. The coil is right here. A fan is driven by a motor and a belt system, and it blows across the coil. So the coil is at 180 degrees. The fan blows across there and it pushes that 180 degree air throughout the building. What we have is, this is constantly trying to make that coil at 180 degrees. So there's a sensor on it. So if it drops by 20 degrees, then what happens is the heating valve opens back up and it flushes it with hot water. If it feels that it's getting too hot and it needs to temper it for the building, then the heating valve will shut, which it does it by this right here. This is called an actuator, and the actuator is electronic, and it will get a call from the system. So you can set it up on a computer where you can have this open and close based on your set temps. So an actuator here is basically a gate opening and closing, but it's also a regulator for your coil. So it is deciding whether or not to keep pumping hot water through there or to back it off. But if your temp for the building is at 68 degrees, and that's what you want the building to hold at, and you have an outside air temp sensor that says, hey, it's 68 degrees outside, then what happens is you can set this up where it shuts down and your economizer takes over. And what your economizer is basically opening up dampers, and it floods the building with outside air. And as it floods the building with outside air, we're using nature to heat or cool the building. And we're being energy efficient, and in that, we're saving ourselves money. And the system is also taking a break. Yes, the fan still runs, but our boilers get to shut down, or our chiller gets to shut down if we're doing cooling, and this will supply to the building. But just like anything, it has a downfall. Outside air brings in humidity in the summertime, which we'll talk about with cooling and how we balance that. All right, but in the wintertime, we still pull in outside air because now we actually want cooler air. So if we can have cooler air come into a building when we've gotten it too hot and we want to bring the temp down, that's good. But if the economizer opens up and it gets too cold and we feel that the coil is failing, like you're not getting the hot water in the coil, you have a wire right here, which is a freestat, and it measures how cold that air is blowing across there. So if your economizer sticks open and it's 20 degrees outside and you're blowing ice cold air across that, it doesn't matter if it's at 180 degrees, you're going to drop the temp on it. And if that's the case, you can end up freezing the coil and burst the coil. Well, what happens is this will shut the system down. So that freestat will shut the system down, and there's a reset for it right here with the wire going in, and it closes your outside air dampers and no longer lets in any cold air. So it's kind of like shutting everything down, locking it up, and making sure it's okay. No, you won't be heating the building, but you won't be freezing up a coil either. So it's a last minute safety measure. As we get more into the air handler, we'll talk about the cooling, but basically to take away from this video, we have hot water coming into a coil, we have hot water coming out with a fan blowing across it, and we use outside air from an economizer to help temper one way or another, or shut the system down completely so that we can use nature to cool the building.